guys, it's Sam and I'm here with another Trope Talk video. So Trope Talk is one of my series that I do here intermittently on my channel, and it's featuring tropes that are very specific that I love. That's what I'm trying to feature right now. Eventually I might get a little bit broader because I will eventually run out of tropes that I love, but right now it's like very specific tropes. And this one I was just making a list for, and I thought that I had read more with this topic. But apparently I haven't. I just think about it a lot. It shouldn't really be surprising to you. And that is the magical woods trope, kind of combined with, because they usually overlap, the like beware of the forest trope. That will guaranteed get me every time. I don't know what it is about it. I don't so much love it if it has to do with like beware of the woods because of the fae. I feel like that's separate because fae stories feel a little bit separate to me. This is just general fantasy, sometimes bordering on some like the horror elements of fantasy, with the magical woods, usually with a capital W. So let's get into some of my favorites. First, and probably the creme de la creme for me, is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This features a magical wood, capital W, that everyone is warded away from. There is a sorcerer who is helping to protect the village from this magical wood, and there are things in there. And you find out later on what those things really are, but it's a lot, what I like about like magical wood stories, it's a lot of like nature magic, corrupted nature magic, and having to like usually undo the corruption of the nature magic. It gets me every time. Something I just love about it. I don't even know where this origin started for me with the magical woods, but something about it and having to like undo and heal the woods, I just love it. And this is a major theme in Uprooted. Then we have Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. This leans more horror because in this there are bad things happening in the woods. It's not necessarily a capital W woods, but there are girls that go missing and end up killed in the woods of Sawkill, and the main characters kind of have to figure out what's going on with all of that. So it is more of a like beware the woods story. And this has fantasy, like it's a fantasy horror type thing, but it is a contemporary set story, and I feel like the magical wood with the corruption tends to be more of like an actual fantasy realm story. I told you this is a very specific trope. This is what Trope Talk is about. Then we have The Raven Boys of Maggie Stiefvater. This is less of Beware the Forest and more of a magical forest. Again, the main characters in here discover a place, a magical place called Cabeswater. That's a part of the forest, but not. You kind of get into it a different way, and it's along a ley line, so it kind of molds, and there is an element of it being corrupted at some point throughout the series because of the magic being corrupted as well. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy these woods where like you're not sure if they're gonna turn on you. They almost feel like their own character, and they're very atmospheric. That's what I love about these magical woods settings. Then we have The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. This is about a girl whose grandmother was a writer of a famous fairy tale story that was dark fairy tales, and she eventually has to travel back to her grandmother's house, which is called the Hazelwood, but it is surrounded by woods. So you kind of have like a Crimson Peak surrounded in woods setting, which is great. So I really appreciate that. And this is, again, a magical woods where the fairy tale ends and the reality begins is very like blended, and it's weird and creepy, and the fairy tales in here are just not your typical fairy tales. You think they're gonna follow the same fairy tale beats, and then they don't, and that's also kind of how the wood feels in here as well. And lastly, we have The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This features Eastern European folklore and mythology, and a big part of that really in a lot of cultures that are very winter heavy, with winters that can kill you, you avoid the woods. Because if you end up in the woods and you get lost, you might die of frostbite and all of those great things like hypothermia. So that's a big part of it, but also there are like more magical creatures that exist in the woods, and our main character is kind of the go-between between magic and reality in her world and in the history of the world where she is. So she does interact more with the things that live in the forest, and I love her for it. And lastly, I do want to mention a book that I haven't yet read, so it's not a recommendation, but I know that if I don't mention it, people are going to be like, what about this book? But I have yet to read it. So not a recommendation, because I don't recommend books that I haven't read yet. And that is The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. definitely has a beware the forest, there's dark things in the forest, protect people from the forest, we might have to go into the forest. It has all of that, and that is one of the reasons why I wanted to read it so bad. Also, look at this cover. It speaks to me. So those are the books featuring the magical forest, magical wood, dark things in the forest, corrupted forest, beware the forest, plot lines. So, like I said, I really enjoy the more magical base setting, although I will do some like contemporary stories since that is kind of in here as well, but my favorite, the top, with Uprooted, is definitely a fantasy setting, fantasy world, where there is some kind of nature magic going on, and there is a forest that usually has some dark stuff in it is corrupted. Maybe it's just like that. I also tend to like, which I didn't mention, forest nature creatures that are like made out of the forest, so like lichen and, you know, like moss and rotten wood and like all of that stuff. Oh, I love that so much. That's also in Uprooted. It's also in part of the video game, The Wild Hunt, Witcher 3. So all that kind of stuff. That is actually I think those kind of creatures are popular in Russian and Eastern European myth and stuff as well, I think. So those things I love the most. So if you know any books that I didn't talk about that feature those topics and themes, definitely comment them below and let me know. Like I said, it's very specific. It's not just a don't go in the woods because that's smart. It's like there's something in the woods that needs fixing. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.